Whatever the occasion, effortless elegance is right this way. Because Hilton brings you new ways to stay courtesy of the Nomad London. And it doesn't stop at award-winning dining in a space draped in velvet and illuminated by vintage chandeliers. No, this day goes beyond with unparalleled personalized service and attentive hospitality. Oh, and did we mention the Nomad London can be booked using your Hilton Honors points at Hilton.com? Hilton, for the stay.
This episode is sponsored by Friskies, who would like to tell your cats hi. Now, if that didn't get your cat's attention, there is one thing that always does the trick. Just pour some Friskies crunchy food in the bowl and you'll hear those paws come running. Works every time. With so many Friskies choices, you can always bring your cats running from their secret napping spots. There's always more to explore. See for yourself at friskies.com or visit your local store.
Welcome to Nature Back, Owen.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Tell us in a few words, what is Shine?
Shine is a niche solar contractor for the multifamily industry.
How did you start it something like this? Sounds really technical, or let's say infrastructural.
Yeah, it's 8 years in the making, I think. I have a background in finance, and that kind of led me to a career in energy management, where I use financial analysis to justify environmental CapEx projects. And I had a job as a Fortune 100 energy manager for a while. Then I started doing my own thing, sort of starting my entrepreneurial journey. But in 2015, I got hyper obsessed with trying to decarbonize the multifamily space, and we can go into more why, or we can go into why more if you want. But since 2015, I've been trying to crack that nut of why don't multifamily owners and operators sort of look at energy efficiency and renewable energy as a value add. And it's taken a really long time and multiple business models. But, in 2023, which was when Shine started, we finally landed on sort of the solution that the industry really needs, which is a turnkey one and just a very specialized approach because multifamily properties are very different and have their own challenges. And so it's been a long journey, but taking learnings along the way and coming up with a business model that really works for the industry.
The road from 2015 to 2023, 8 years. What took you so long, guys?
Yeah, I know. What took us so long? Well, I think the biggest thing is that we had to learn how to build a software platform, right? We have financial experience. We have our COO is a master electrician of 20 years. So we know how to analyze solar. We know how to install solar, but we didn't have a clue how to build a software platform, which was necessary for billing tenants. And, some of these things are not obvious until you try and start doing them. And so it's been interesting because we're having a great year this year. And so on paper, it looks like we're growing really quickly. But if you put in a bunch of zeros in revenue, basically from 2015 to 2023, then it doesn't look so great.
How far are you today?
In terms of what we're doing from an installation perspective
how do you
or revenue?
measure your success? What's the key metrics you track?
Yeah, I think our investors like to look at revenue and EBITDA. We're on track to do about 7 million in revenue this year, which is great. Last year we did about 500,000. So that's
growth.
Great growth. But I think, we're really driven by impact. So I think we take a look at, and fortunately for us, impact and revenue are tied, right? The more units that we decarbonize, the higher our revenue is. We're about to cross 2,000 units decarbonized, which is awesome. It's a big milestone for us. We have way more lofty goals than that. But like I've already said, it's taken a long time to get here. So hopefully we're in sort of the growth phase.
For the viewers around the world, geography-wise, you focused on what part of the US?
We're nationwide. So that was a big part of the solution that we wanted to create. Real estate owners inherently, the big ones, have portfolios that span different cities, different states. And there were some sort of quasi solutions that worked in some markets, like 3 of the 50 states. And the feedback that we got from the industry was that was really frustrating. if they installed solar in California, they wanted to be able to install solar in Texas or Florida or anywhere else that they had their portfolio. And so when we started to think about the solution that we wanted to build, we knew that it had to be turnkey, and we knew that it had to be nationwide, because we want our customers to be able to do a project in Colorado and then focus on the rest of their portfolio, and not have to kind of cherry pick the states or the cities where it works.
Where the legislation is in place, or where the software works, or any other limitations like that, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely nuances. I think the biggest nuance for us is just the financial metrics are different. The biggest driver is the cost of electricity, which it varies wildly in the US. So it works everywhere, but how well it works is really driven by what's the cost of electricity in a particular city or utility.
US wide, how much do you have grid problems these days? I mean, we are recording this episode on the day when I think like Spain and Portugal and a few other countries were hit by a massive blackout because of something. I think at this point, nobody really knows what happened and why the grids are down in, big countries.
Yeah, I mean, I'll probably get a little bit of hate for this, but I think climate catastrophes are kind of like the new mass shooting. Like, they just happen so frequently that people are sort of like, they brush it off. It's scary for me. I have young kids. I think anybody with kids, or anyone that's really young, should be nervous about sort of the, the position that we're in. I think, though, at the same time, we can't just go into a panic mode. Like, we have to maintain optimism and realize that there is enough time to make a difference, make a change, and sort of change the direction that we're headed. But we need a lot of help, because it's not going to be just us that's doing it. It's got to be a lot of different companies, a lot of different entrepreneurs, all sort of committed to the same goals.
You're talking about solar, but how much in the US you're seeing already the trends towards the green microgrids, where maybe they're using, I don't know, hydrogen as the storage for the excessive solar, or some other solutions?
I mean, I would, at a like penetration perspective, I would say it's zero. The last data point that I heard, residential solar penetration in the US was about 3%. On multifamily properties, it's maybe half of that, probably less. I think green microgrids is even newer, right? So I would put it closer to zero. I think it's getting increasingly more popular, but I think some of the technology, I mean, solar's been around for 40, 50 years, and we still get questions about, like, is the technology sound? Is it gonna, is the price going to increase, or decrease, or is the efficacy going to increase? Like, why should people install it now? So if you think about a technology like microgrids, I think that's got even a bigger challenge when it comes to adoption right now, because it's less known, and people always kind of question the validity of certain technologies.
The question stems from the fact that we ran a green microgrid webinar during the last New York City Climate Week, and it was really widely attended, and the interest in the sector was really, really big. So I'm kind of trying to get a perspective, maybe to understand how far it is in the US.
Yeah, I mean, I think about a sort of a big trend in the real estate investing space right now is like build to rent communities, where people are building whole new developments, but they're not selling off the townhomes or the single family homes, or renting them. And I think about, like, that's really the time to sort of introduce a microgrid, because it's so much easier when you're bringing in all the infrastructure. I think a problem that people don't necessarily think about is utilities. Like, they don't like this. They don't like microgrids, and they don't like solar, because it inherently goes against their business model. So I think a big part of the problem that we have in the US is sort of the regulatory roadblocks that come up. But the technology works, and in certain instances where you have to bring in the infrastructure anyway, it probably works even better. But it's just, sometimes it's so hard to get things done because of different regulations.
You said a few words about coming from the financial background and from the investment background. You're part of the Z&E Capital. What is Z&E Capital?
So Z&E Capital was really the first kind of entity on this journey to decarbonize multifamily. I started investing passively as a limited partner in multifamily investments, I think in 2014. And what I noticed right away was that owners and operators really don't have a clue about energy management. They kind of view it as overhead that grows 3% a year, rather than a value add opportunity to increase the returns on a property. And so what we wanted to do at ZNE is we wanted to use on-site solar to improve project level returns. So we knew that we had to have a sound real estate investment to start with, like good foundation. But what we thought is, or what we wanted to show is, if we included on-site solar, we may increase, say, a 16% project level return to an 18%, which is a big impact on investors to LPs. And so we started ZNE Capital with the premise of, let's go acquire properties that we're going to do a traditional value add model on, and then incorporate the solar value add model on top of that. And it worked. We acquired 650 units worth about $75 million. We installed solar on almost all the properties. We had a problem with one. And the solar worked great. We bought a few properties sort of during peak ZIRP area, right before interest rates skyrocketed and expenses skyrocketed from COVID. So we had some challenges due to sort of the expenses side of the equation, but the solar value add model worked. And it was that sort of lesson or learnings that really created a desire to want to launch Shine, because we thought, if it works for this small handful of properties, it will work for virtually every other multifamily property out there. But there needs to be a contractor that understands the multifamily space. And there's no better way to understand the multifamily space than buy 650 apartment units yourself. So now we just feel like we're perfectly suited to kind of solve a problem for other multifamily owners.
Mm. What's basically the bottleneck in getting from 3% to 100%? What's the
that's a good question. I think honestly, a lot of it is education. Pre-Shine, solar contractors were pitching common area installations to apartment owners. And so if you think of your typical apartment building, only 5 to 10% of total electricity consumption is from the common area meters. The other 90 to 95% is from tenants. Mm-hmm. And that's problematic for a couple of reasons. Solar installations on common area meters don't really do anything from an emission standpoint. It's more of a marketing ploy. But the other big problem is that the numbers are so small relative to the overall project cost that it's hard to get the asset manager's attention in terms of, this is a worthwhile project to pursue. Like if you have a $40 million apartment acquisition, you're trying to convince someone to install $250,000 of solar that's going to save $40,000 a year. It's just not really worth anyone's time. So what we recognized was the bigger opportunity is installing solar on the tenant meters. Because now, instead of doing a $250,000 installation that saves $40,000 a year, you can do a $2 million installation that generates $200,000 a year. And when you take those sort of unit economics and you apply it to the overall pro forma of a property, that's where you can start getting really accretive returns for the project level. And so we're on sort of an educational campaign right now, just to let the industry know that not only does the hardware exist to do installations on the tenant meters, software exists to handle all the monitoring on the back end and the billing of tenants on the back end, because those were the challenges that the industry is used to facing.
Mm.
You know that feeling when someone shows up for you just when you need it most? That's what Uber is all about. Not just a ride or dinner at your door. It's how Uber helps you show up for the moments that matter. Because showing up can turn a tough day around or make a good one even better. Whatever it is, big or small, Uber is on the way. So you can be on yours. Uber, on our way.
I think you're on mute.
Workday starting to sound the same?
I think you're on mute.
Find something that sounds better for your career on LinkedIn. With LinkedIn Job Collections, you can browse curated collections by relevant industries and benefits, like flex PTO or hybrid workplaces, so you can find the right job for you. Get started at linkedin.com/jobs. finding where you fit. LinkedIn knows how.
So you said that 2025 is off to a lovely start, and plan to grow 14-fold this year. What are the kind of the underlying assumptions for you guys to keep on going like that?
Well, I think our hope is that 2025 is a bit of a case study year for some really large institutional owners. And so if we do one or two projects with these institutional owners that own, 100 multifamily properties, our hope is that 2026 they'll start to scale adoption within their portfolio. So that's part of the reason that we think we'll grow equally as fast in 2026. It's also, the unfortunate part of the multifamily space is it's not very innovative and things take a long time. And so a lot of the conversations that we're having this year is kind of planting the seed for owners and operators that will make acquisitions later this year, next year, 2027, et cetera. So again, it's part of this, this educational journey, getting owners and operators to understand what the effects of on-site solar does to their pro forma, to their returns, helping them kind of build it into their pro formas pre-acquisition so that once they acquire property, they can just move into installation. So it's a lot of legwork that has to go into it in order to kind of scale the actual installations.
So I think for the classical startup investors who are worried about the length of the sales cycle, this is not the industry to worry about the length of the sales cycle. It's kind of baked in, right?
Yeah, our sales cycle is long. It's probably from like the first conversation with someone new to the first installation starting is about a year. What we've seen is that sales cycle is shorter for projects within the same customer on new properties. But it takes a long time to get a new multifamily owner comfortable with solar, comfortable with how we underwrite sort of the income and the expenses into their pro forma. But once they see the effects, they tend to want to do it every project moving forward, as long as it makes sense from a solar perspective.
What's a typical project for you guys at Shine?
Typical project is about probably 700 kW. So that's, what is that in dollars perspective? I think it's between 1.5 and $2 million. We usually install about 3 kilowatts per apartment unit. So that's like a small residential installation. I think typical residential installation in the US is about 5 kilowatts. So it's 3/5 of a residential installation per apartment unit. So on aggregate, it's pretty big. A 700 kW system is a decent size for the C&I space, but on the individual interconnection basis, it's pretty small. It's a bunch of small resi systems.
Llegaron los nuevos McCrispy Strips, listos para aventurarse en la mezcla de mayo ketchup, la barbecue que quedó en el fondo de la cajita, hot fudge sundae y en la nueva creamy chili McCrispy Strip dip. Los nuevos McCrispy Strips, ahora en McDonald's. Para pa pa pa.
Switch to Verizon Business and get more from your internet without paying more for your internet. Get LTE Business Internet starting at $39 a month when paired with select business mobile plans. That's unlimited data, and with it, unlimited possibilities. Start saving today with Verizon Business, ranked #1 in small business internet customer satisfaction by J.D. Power. Starting price for 25 megabits per second LTE internet plan with smartphone plan savings, plus taxes, fees, and economic adjustment charge. Terms apply. For J.D. Power 2024 award information, visit jdpower.com/awards.
And typically the panels go on top of the building, or?
Yeah, almost always we're doing rooftop installations. The reason being is that most real estate groups are profit maximizing, and it's just cheaper to install on the roof than it is in the parking lot. But if you're in an environment where you can charge for covered parking, or you want to introduce EV charging as an amenity, then the economics can actually flip, and they can be better if you install as covered parking rather than rooftop, or do both.
How much of the competition is out there? Any
Zero.
other?
Zero. There's no.
I would assume that there are at least some
there's a million
contractors who
solar
are doing
companies
it on their own, or.
Yeah, I mean, there's a million solar companies that would love to install common area installations for apartment owners because it's really easy, right? Your average solar contractor just wants to do like a single interconnection, a megawatt on an industrial roof. Super easy, but a lot of competition. Our installations come with one interconnection per apartment unit. So 200 unit apartment building, it's 200 interconnections, 200 sets of permits, 200 sets of plans. I mean, it is a giant pain in the ass. And other solar contractors don't have the software that we spent 3 years building. So it's hard to enter this market from sort of an IP perspective, and it's a pain from an installation perspective. And so we've seen that there's nobody else out there.
Good.
Which is good. It's good and bad, right? It's
of course.
It's great from a competition perspective, but it means that it's only us trying to spread the word and spread the education. So it comes with challenges.
What about the other countries and continents? Have you seen something like this being done in Europe or in Asia or?
Yeah, I have seen a couple similar business models in Europe. We were actually talking to a VC firm that I think was based in Germany about our seed round, and they really liked our business model, but they decided not to invest because they'd invest in I think a German or Spanish company that could be a competitor to ours if they decide to come to the US. So, at the most basic level, we're solving the split incentive problem where the owner of the property has to pay for solar, but historically the benefit has gone to tenants. And now we've figured out a way to reroute that benefit back to the owners, which justifies their CapEx expense. That problem is not novel to the US. It exists everywhere with sort of multiple meter properties. So I'm not surprised that there's similar business models in Europe or, or outside. I think Australia probably has a couple too.
Should be at least at some point, if not yet. And the more solar heavy countries or more kind of sunshine countries, the more logical it would be for the bigger towns to have something like this.
Yeah.
Just maybe the last question to wrap up our discussion here. Looking ahead in 2025, what's your biggest challenge? What does it take for you not to reach that 14x growth?
It takes a new administration. There's there's a lot of things that could happen. I think the biggest risk that we run, that really the entire solar industry faces, is what's going to happen to the tax credits. Part of the Inflation Reduction Act made the tax credits in the US, the solar tax credits, transferable, which created this whole new tax credit marketplace for solar, which has been incredible because, like, specific to commercial real estate, generally owners and operators have so much depreciation from their buildings that federal tax credits are useless. So now, at least for the time being, we can sell the tax credits for cash, which is useful for commercial real estate owners. If that goes away, we're going to have to be nimble and pivot, and the rest of the industry is too. My hope is that doesn't go away. There's a lot of really smart people in DC that are starting to connect the dots between the race for AI and the need for energy. And 90% of all new energy is from renewable sources. So if you get rid of that tax credit transferability, you're going to really hinder our ability to win the AI space. So my hope is that people can sort of depoliticize energy for a while, and that it doesn't get wrapped up into this, Democrats versus Republican war. But I think TBD on all of that.
But it's really interesting to see how AI could have a massive impact on the the buildings solar energy choices. Today's world where everything seems to be so interlinked.
It's so interconnected, and AI, despite people's fears or concerns about it, it's not going to go away. It's only going to get more important. And it's so energy intense that if we cannot figure out how to bring new electrons online, we're going to be in a huge amount of trouble. And so it really should not be a conversation of fossil fuels versus renewables. Like, we have to figure out just how to bring electrons online as fast as possible. And it's going to be a blend of each.
Absolutely. Good. Thanks so much for your time, Owen.
Yeah, thank you.
If you like the show, subscribe and leave a good rating on the podcast platform of your choice. It would mean a world to us.
Electric acid.